Good evening and welcome to the September 21st, 2020 regular meeting of Mayor and City Council. First item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'm going to ask our newly sworn in City Manager Tanisha Briley to lead us in the pledge this evening.
Thank you, Mayor. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Next item on our agenda is reflection. And I wanted to, before we called for a moment of silence, I wanted to send our condolences to family, friends, and colleagues of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who died on Friday, I believe. She left a giant mark on American life, particularly in the realm of pay equality and gender equality. And while she was a tremendous and effective advocate, it was also notable that she exemplified civility. She listened to and worked well with those who came to the table with a different perspective, which is something that's missing a lot in American society today. And I'll say it's very much how we've tried to be here in the city of Gaithersburg as we do business. So in addition to carrying on her legacy by being tremendously brilliant and effective whenever we can be, let's not forget how important that civility was to Justice Ginsburg, and may she rest in peace. And I'll call for a moment of silence. Thank you very much. Next item on our agenda is approval of minutes. And we have two sets of minutes to approve this evening. The first is from Monday, August 24th. It is from a work session. What is the pleasure of the council? Raise your hand if you want to make the motion. Rob Wu.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Move approval.
Okay. Do we have a second? Mike.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. I'm going to call the roll. Councilmember Sesma.
Aye.
Councilmember Harris.
Aye.
Councilmember Spiegel.
Aye.
Councilmember Wu.
Aye.
And Councilmember Sales.
Aye.
Thank you all. That carries unanimously. The next set of minutes we have are the minutes from the regular session on Tuesday, September 8th. What's the pleasure of the council? Rob Wu.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Move approval.
Okay. Lorianne.
Second.
Okay, I'll call the roll. All in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. Councilmember Sesma.
Aye.
Councilmember Harris.
Aye.
Councilmember Spiegel.
Aye.
Councilmember Wu.
Aye.
And Councilmember Sales.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Next on our agenda is appointments. And let's see, we have 3 appointments and 1 reappointment to Environmental Affairs Committee and to the Police Advisory Committee. What is the pleasure of the council? Rob Wu.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I figure I'd take these since I'm the council liaison to both of these committees. So, Mr. Mayor, I move approval of your resolution. 3 appointments to the Environmental Affairs Committee, each for a 2-year term. Zainab Abbas for a term expiring 9/22. Christine Chin Choi for a term also expiring 9/22. And Chloe Malouf for a term expiring on 9/22. And then a reappointment to the Police Advisory Committee for a 2-year term of Carol Martin for a term expiring in 9/22.
Neil Harris.
I second the motion.
Okay, we're going to call the roll. All in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. Councilmember Sesma.
Aye.
Councilmember Harris.
Aye.
Councilmember Spiegel.
Aye.
Councilmember Wu.
Aye.
And Councilmember Sales.
Aye.
Thank you. That carries unanimously. And we will thank our volunteers when we see them. And I'll remind everyone that joining and getting involved in one of our volunteer committees is a great way to serve your community. They provide very meaningful advice to the mayor and council that we rely on quite a bit. So hope you'll consider it. We will move on to presentations. And I'd like tech team, if you could bring up Chuck Bean, who's the executive director of the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments. And just as a way of introduction, you know, at these Monday night meetings, we are generally involved in the business, the very sort of provincial business of what's happening in the city of Gaithersburg. And occasionally we brought in our scope. A few weeks ago, we had Montgomery Planning here to talk about the suburban staging policy. And today we're going even broader to look from a regional perspective. And we have Chuck Bean, who from the what we call COG, Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments. It does great work on projecting and helping everybody in the DC metro region manage growth and understand what, you know, project what's going to happen and serve our residents in the region as best we can. So Chuck, thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Mayor. That's a great introduction. Appreciate that. And greetings, Council Vice President Sales and members of the council, and special greeting to new City Manager Tanisha Briley. Welcome to the region. We look forward to working with you. I think your staff has a slide deck ready to go. Very good. Let's go to the next page, please. This is a little bit about the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments. What you see before you is the map of our region. This is about 3,700 square miles, about 5.7 million people. For Gaithersburg residents that might be looking at the metropolitan statistical area, that's a little bit broader than the COG footprint. That's a little over 6 million people. What you would do is add a handful of more rural counties to this, this footprint here. And when we say members of COG, we mean all of you, the elected officials. Membership also means the jurisdiction. So Gaithersburg has been a member of the Council of Governments, and we've been an organization that was formed over 60 years ago in 1957. We have about 125 staff. Biggest department is in transportation planning, also environmental planning, which means water, drinking water, stormwater, wastewater management, homeland security and public safety, and planning, health, and other areas. If you go to the next slide, as a region, we've grown particularly fast in the last 90 years since World War II. The suburbs growing in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, doubling in each of those decades. So now, comparison to other metropolitan areas of the country, only after New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, and two metro areas that have grown very fast over the last 30 years, Dallas and Houston, we're the 6th largest metro region in the country. If we were a country and our GDP was measured that way, we'd be about the size of the economy of Sweden. So next slide, please. I mentioned that we currently have about 5.7 million people in that footprint. Well, we forecast an additional 1.5 million people that will join us by 2040, 2045. This is really driven by jobs. Projection of jobs means the projection of people, which means projections of the households that are needed for those people. And next slide, please. Just to put in context, that addition of 1.5 million people, that's about the population of the city of Philadelphia. So over the next 25 years, looking for the city, or we're projecting for the population of the city of Philadelphia, if you will, to be joining us in that region. So managing that growth effectively to maintain a quality of life while having a vibrant economy is a fundamental challenge for our region. Next slide, please. Just a little bit more background about how we're structured. The COG Board of Directors is composed of elected officials. We're glad to have Council Member Wu representing Gaithersburg on the council. We also have a Transportation Planning Board that I'll talk about just in a moment. I'm glad to have Mr. Harris ably representing Gaithersburg on that. We also have a number of technical committees, so looking for your new city manager to join our CAO committee. That's the City and County Managers Committee. But we also have a police chiefs committee that come to COG every month. And in fact, when the police chiefs see an opportunity or a need for collaboration, there's often an additional subcommittee, whether that's a SWAT team subcommittee or bomb squad or intelligence committee, in order to facilitate collaboration. Same with the fire chiefs. They meet at COG every month. But fire chiefs are essentially the responders to WMATA. So there's a rail passenger safety committee that's formed as a subcommittee of the fire chiefs. Housing directors come and meet at COG, share notes every month, all the planning directors, environmental experts in every discipline, transportation planners, also liaisons from the public, from the private and nonprofit partners. So when we were meeting in person, mayor, council, I used to say 1,500 people came through our doors every month. Now 1,500 people are meeting on one of these committees to facilitate collaboration throughout the region. Next slide, please. I mentioned under our roof is the Transportation Planning Board. The generic name of that is the Metropolitan Planning Organization. There's almost 400 MPOs across the country. Any urbanized area that has 50,000 people or more must have an MPO in order to comply with federal guidelines. And the benefit of complying with federal guidelines means federal support for transportation projects. So I guess one of the carrots and stick of participating in the MPO for our region, our Transportation Planning Board, is that for any transportation project to receive federal funding, it must be in the region's long-range transportation plan. So the many things that the MPO does, Mr. Harris has been deeply involved on several task forces representing your municipality on the TPP. Next slide, please. So I mentioned transportation planning is a major area of work. We also run commuter connections. We have federal grants for enhancing mobility with those physical disabilities, several other programs, Street Smart, etc. Environmental programs, air quality, climate, water, watershed management, community planning services, homeland security, and cooperative purchasing that I'll get to in just a couple more minutes. In the last few years, I'd say the region's mojo has picked up. A lot of vexing problems that have been around have been, if not resolved, at least progressed. Never have had dedicated funding for the metro system. That was achieved. We needed an independent entity to provide regulatory oversight over metro, and the Metro Safety Commission was created, incubated inside of the Council of Governments. The biggest economic development prize really in history, Amazon HQ2, was won by this region, largely in part because of the region's competitiveness, because of the workforce. Working together in consensus on housing affordability, and the region is known as a walkable region, one of the leaders in the country on transit-oriented development. And one of the challenges, the racial reckoning this country has been in this last year, I think the Council of Governments has been working on this through our equity emphasis areas, which is a major transportation project, and the GARE, Government Alliance for Race and Equity, collaboration that COG is engaging over the last couple of years. So that's been some of the mojo, some of the momentum we've had, but we've also had some challenges. Next slide, please. And 2020 has been the year of challenges. We would use the term co-occurring crises of the pandemic, the recession, the racial reckoning, and the climate crisis. Next slide, please. So the COVID crisis, while my organization is not operational, what we seek to do is facilitate collaboration, coordination, communication, and maybe even use the term air traffic control. Maryland, the district, and Virginia are the pilots with these operations, but we facilitate connections between them so that we can, for example, have regional visibility on hospital capacity. Really, health systems are initiatives of the state, but providing some visibility between the district, Maryland, and Virginia. What are the hospital beds? What are the ICU beds? Was an initiative of ours over the last 6 months. Currently engaging in contract tracing data to facilitate collaboration because so many of our residents live in one jurisdiction, would work in another, travel in a third. So public health officials need to be able to securely share that data in order to exercise their mission in public health. Next slide, please. Of course, working, next slide, please. Working in economic recovery is going to be a focus of the next 2 years for the entire region. Opportunities ahead. Of course, always doing better in transportation. Next slide, please. I mentioned that the region's long-range plan is something that is a major project of the Transportation Planning Board. This was passed 2 years ago. Every 4 years, we do a new major iteration. So we're just ramping up to do the next one. Visualize 2045 are identified 100+ major projects that had a reasonable expectation of being funded, combination of local, state, and federal funding. Some of the things that are new or newer that we can expect in the next few years, rail, moving from a paradigm of commuter rail to a regional rail network. So we've been doing a lot of work recently on collaboration between MARC and VRE and the possibility of a rail run through Union Station so that MARC could get to Virginia and VRE can get through Union Station into Maryland, not only for convenience, but for the economic possibilities that that might unleash. I think emerging over the next decade will be a greater focus, not just on rail, but on bus. And BRT is bus rapid transit. I'm sure that you're very familiar with the possibilities in Montgomery, but in Fairfax County, the other large jurisdiction of the region, there's a multi-$100-million initiative called Embark Richmond Highway that's going to be connecting what turns out to be the largest employer in Fairfax County, Fort Belvoir, into the core, into Alexandria, and then into where HQ2 is in National Landing. And the Trails Network is something that was approved just this year, the National Capital Trails Network. We have about going on 700 miles of bicycle trails in the region, but the vision is that we need to better connect those trails and add an additional 700 over the next 20 years to have a National Capital Trails Network of 1,400 bicycle trails in the region. Next, please. Also important for not just quality of life, but a stronger economy and actually a better performing transportation system. If we can get housing closer to jobs, is a greater focus on housing. This was the major focus of the Council of Governments in 2019. And next slide, please. After about 2 years of deliberation and technical input by all the region's planning directors, all the region's housing directors, and finally agreement by the COG board, set on 3 regional targets for the year 2030. And that is on top of COG's forecast of how many houses we would expect, that an additional 75,000 units would be built. That's the amount. The second is accessibility. And we're using this in terms of accessibility to jobs, accessibility to transit. So that the target is that 75% of all this new housing would be in activity centers or near high capacity transit. And I'll get to that in just a moment. And then affordability, affordability that this housing should be affordable, not just a low income, but also middle income households. Next, please. And activity centers is a concept that the region has been working on over the last 20 years. And in different parts of the region, this might have different manifestations, different looks, but they're characterized as with some density, mixed use, so that both commercial and housing are close together. I think the region is striving not only for a paradigm of activity centers being mixed use, but also increasingly mixed income, which is important, but it's also going to be compounding this challenge. So we've identified 141 nodes around the region that we call regional activity centers. Next, please. In a map, it looks like the green census tracts is where these activity centers are. And the work of the next decade is to overlay these activity centers with a focus on high capacity transit. How we're defining high capacity transit is not only the metro stations, but also increasing focus on the commuter rail stations, MARC and VRE, light rail, meaning the purple line, and the bus rapid transit that I mentioned a moment ago. Next, please. Over the last years, I mentioned an increasing focus on racial equity, and I want to highlight that COG Board of Directors unanimously adopted racial equity as a fundamental value. And this was also a similar resolution adopted by TPB. And I'm aware, Mayor Ashman, that I think you and the council received a briefing, was it last week, by the Gaithersburg cohort that was participating in our government alliance for race and equity that COG has sponsored with 11 jurisdictions, 100 participants over the last year.
That is correct.
Thank you, Mayor. And if we go to the next slide, just a couple of notes about some particular benefits for Gaithersburg. And next. The racial equity cohort that we just mentioned. Cooperative purchasing is a member of the Council of Governments Gaithersburg, either has an opportunity to ride the contracts of Fairfax or Prince George's or their district, or participate in contracts that COG itself initiates with the collective buying power of the region. So an example, the region purchases over 40 million gallons of gas and diesel fuel, and Gaithersburg is able to get that price with that bulk purchase, purchasing over 100,000 gallons annually. Similarly, a region makes a purchase of road salt, and Gaithersburg purchases approximately 2,500 tons per year. As part of our work, there are several grant programs that we administer. One is the Transportation Land Use Connections Program. Recent grant out of TLC for Gaithersburg was the support of a feasibility study regarding the potential bicycle connection between Industrial Drive to West Deer Park Road, and that feasibility was supported at $45,000. Next, please. So part of this cooperative purchasing is not just the COG footprint, but we team up with Baltimore, so we have even greater purchasing power. And beyond the reduced pricing, there's also some administrative convenience of administrative savings of writing another jurisdiction's contract. And there's also the possibility to participate in an electronic bid system, which provides the ability to receive formal sealed bids electronically, relieving the need for paper copies and use of mail delivery. So happy to follow up with your staff on any of these. And Mayor, Council, I think I could go on and on with any of these initiatives, but I think I'm aware that you have a busy agenda tonight. And next slide, please. And I will wrap it up with that. Happy to answer any questions.
Chuck, thank you so much for the presentation. You know, in addition to the GARE, the racial equity cohort, cooperative purchasing, the advantageous piggybacking of contracts we do occasionally with our COG partners, Councilmember Harris's distinctive work on the Transportation Planning Board, which you guys hear about once a month and we hear about every other day of the month from Neil, in a good way, But, you know, Neil, you know that's true. I'll also add to the list, there was a period of time, maybe 8-10 years ago, when everybody in the region was working on emergency planning, and the COG partnerships came in very, very handy for us when we were forming our agreements for continuity of operations and all that stuff we were working on back then. There's a lot of value in being part of this regional group. Frankly, I don't understand why any jurisdiction in this area is not part of COG, but that's up to them. For us, I think it makes a lot of sense. And so, so thanks for the reminder and for doing such a good job in helping us collaborate and build those ties. Do we have any questions or comments from the council? Looking around. Maybe Neil would raise his hand, but he was saying goodnight to his son. Neil, you want to say anything, and then we'll go to Lorianne?
Sure, yes, that was Sam saying goodnight to everyone in Gaithersburg. Chuck, I mean, I think very highly of the organization. COG does great work. The Transportation Planning Board has been very deeply involved in trying to unclog things in the area. So I don't really have any questions, except that I'm wondering since we're updating the plan after 4 years, is it going to be called Visualize 2049 next? Is that the plan?
That will be a policy decision of the board.
Okay, but I'm really looking forward to working with you and the Transportation Planning Board and the great staff that you have at TPB on figuring out how to get things moving more quickly around here. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Your impact has been always constructive, even if it's sometimes been critical.
Got my number.
All right, we'll go to Lorianne.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you again, Mr. Bean, for your presentation. I did have a few questions about some of the information you shared. Namely the racial equity cohort. As you know, we did receive a presentation last Monday about the cohort. And so I'm just wondering, I know it was abridged a bit because of the pandemic. I'm wondering what is next? And then if you could briefly talk about the transportation policy and the equity framework.
Sure, thank you. Appreciate the question. Starting with the racial equity cohort, it was abridged. It was all in person, 100 individuals from 11 jurisdictions all together. And then we went virtual along with everything else. We expected that first cohort to conclude this summer, but because of the disparities that have emerged or have come into view as a result of the pandemic, there's going to be a continuation of that first group. So we're calling that implementation cohort. We're also going to start an additional cohort, invite some other jurisdictions that were not able to be part of cohort 1. So we'll have a new introductory cohort that will start in 2021. So the opportunity for Gaithersburg would be to continue implementation and also have additional staff come into the introductory cohort that we begin in 2021. For our organization, there's also a couple of initiatives. One is working with all the continuum of care that serve the homeless in the region. We're going to be issuing an RFP for an analysis of homeless services in the region from a racial equity lens. So we're very excited about that, and it's going to be really important for all of the homeless service providers in the region. We'll have an initial report out on that in the spring, and then a final report on that in the fall.
Oh,
the equity emphasis areas is transportation, comes out of our transportation planning. And what we did through that analysis was identify census tracts that had a majority people of color and a majority low income or a majority both, so that those census tracts, those geographies were identified. The fundamental purpose is then we run a modeling analysis to look at the proposed transportation plans as we look to 2030 and 2040 and look to see if there's equity in terms of who receives the benefit or who might bear the burdens of those plans. So that one marker of that would be out of a census tract X, how many jobs as a result of this transportation plan are accessible within a 30-minute commute or a 45-minute commute. So on the mwcog.org website, Googling equity emphasis areas, there's more information. There's also an interactive map. So one would be able to look at these census tracts from these different lenses.
Thank you for that. And then I also had a question about the cooperative purchasing. I know the city actually changed how we apply salt to our roads. And so I'm just wondering if this is something that we're not locked into this purchasing every year if we're not using as much salt anymore.
Absolutely not. Only a municipality would only purchase what they need. Buy more, save more. We also have balancing within the council of governments, because we have an environmental focus, making sure that it's the right kind of salt. So we'll be looking to save money, but we'll get advice from a subject matter experts that the runoff from this particular treatment would also be environmentally friendly. So these discussions are continuous.
All right, thank you.
Thanks. We'll go to Mike.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Bean, for being here tonight. I've been the liaison to the Region Forward Committee for a few years, and I guess that would be a place where all of these different initiatives and planning are kind of unsiloed and talked about as a continuum and integrated plan. So we talk about planning both in terms of housing and economic development, transportation, but also with respect to health and welfare of the communities involved. So I think it's been a great boon to the communities that do engage in Region Forward, but also I think it demonstrates that there's a clear recognition that all of the municipalities and local governments are able to participate at some level and certainly take advantage of everything that the staff has to offer. So that's been a real eye-opener, and certainly some ideas that we've that I've learned there have been brought back and shared with my colleagues on the council and with staff as well. So I think the kind of an integrative approach to planning and even applying the racial equity lens to all of that, because that kind of ties all of those things together as we think about our place in the region, but also how we develop as a community as well. So that's clearly one of the advantages of the Council of Governments.
Thank you, sir. Yes, the Region Forward Coalition is somewhat our think tank as things, the new ideas get digested, make their way up to the Transportation Planning Board or to the Council of Governments. And that kind of think tank approach, I've observed that we've taken more of an integrated approach. That's not just transportation, it's not just housing. In fact, if we want to get better transportation outcomes, often we need to focus on housing and get the housing proximate to transit so it's closer to the jobs. I think as we look at climate change, for example, got to look at the major sectors of course, transportation, but energy and the built environment. So another policy committee of Council of Governments, Climate, Energy, and Environment Policy Committee is looking at that increasingly integrated approach. So thank you, Council Member.
Any other questions, council members? Okay. Chuck, thank you so much for being with us, and we look forward to next time. And we'll see you around COG, or at least around the COG Zoom.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. So the next item on our agenda is public comments, and tech team, I'm going to ask if you want to play the instructional video. That would be great.
Good evening. If you've connected to the meeting tonight via Zoom and you're on a desktop or a laptop and you wish to make a public comment, we can't currently see or hear you. What you need to do, please, is wiggle your mouse around and look towards the bottom center of your screen. You should see a raise hand button. Go ahead and click on that now for us, please. Alternatively, if you've connected in via telephone, you can press *9.
Thank you very much, Brian. So I see a few hands up, and we'll start calling people. When we call you up, we ask that you state your name and address, or neighborhood if you feel more comfortable with neighborhood. Begin your testimony. We ask that you keep your testimony to no more than 3 minutes. If you have more than 3 minutes worth of testimony, you're welcome to submit the entire thing in written testimony. Just email it to us. We'll consider it just the same as oral testimony. So tech team, if you could bring up Shanika Whitehurst, we'll start with Shanika. And Shanika, when you're ready, just unmute yourself, state your name, address, or neighborhood, and go ahead.
All right, good afternoon, or I should say good evening, everyone. My name is Shanika Whitehurst. I live on Gaither Street in the East Deer Park community in Gaithersburg, Maryland. My comments for you today, I have some reserved for later on in the agenda, but it's harking back to talking about Wawa and looking at the individual or unforeseen impacts that it will have on homeowners, more on their property values, also on their ability to resell their houses. And just putting that out there as the council approaches or considers other ideas that have unforeseen impacts to this community of East Gaithersburg, but also off of 355. I also want to make a comment just in general about the administrative practices and processes. If you all are elected to represent the people here of the city of Gaithersburg, that being said, access, true access, needs to be granted and given, not just the bare minimum because that satisfies your requirements, but truly true access where people can be civically involved. That's, I guess, in theory, when you all talk about Gaithersburg, that's the happy picture that you like to paint, but it would like to see that really come into fruition. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Shanika. Let me just say before tech team, you can bring up Rob Bindeman, but Shanika, maybe you and I should touch base offline because I want to hear more about what you have in mind in terms of true access. How would that look? Anyway, Rob, when you're ready, unmute yourself, state your name and address or neighborhood, and begin your testimony.
Okay. Hey, good evening, Mr. Mayor, and welcome to the new city manager. I'm Rob Bindeman. My family and I have owned and operated mostly affordable apartments in Gaithersburg for over 40 years. In addition to Montgomery House Apartments on South Frederick Avenue, I own Montgomery Park Apartments directly across the street from the Duvall Funeral Home. I'm speaking tonight with regard to Duvall's request to extend their application period on the proposed crematorium at the funeral home, and state unequivocally that there's no meritorious reason to extend the application period. Any hardship that Mr. Duvall and his attorney, Mr. Wallace, claim with regard to responding to the community is really self-imposed. Let's run through a timeline of Mr. Duvall's application. He filed the application in February. From February to August, they did absolutely no outreach to the community. Not an email, not a call to a single neighbor. Then just before the application was to be heard, they hastily put up a sign and mailed postcards. They did the absolute bare minimum. It was only after August 3rd, the August 3rd hearing, that the community really became aware of this application. What happened next was remarkable. Business owners, homeowners, apartment renters, and churches did what they were supposed to do. Frankly, what Bob Duvall should have done. They got organized and did outreach. Yard signs started to appear against the crematorium. Lawyers who were experts in zoning were hired, websites were launched, and the word got out. So on August 11, the applicant requested that the record be held open to allow for them to do community outreach, with the council granted until September 16. The applicant did not hold a meeting until a month later, September 9, and it was really more of a webinar than a meeting. So more emails came in. The community has been diligent in its efforts to provide comments before the record closes. The applicant has had 7 months to engage the community, but has never done so. Why extend the comment period now? It's easy. They want the fervor to die down. They know that 500 emails have come into the city. Over 150 more people signed a petition, and the application has been spotlighted unfavorably on Bethesda Beat and Fox 5. They just want to stall. The deadline was already extended, and they did nothing substantial with that time to engage the community. There's no reason to expect that after 7 months and one extension, they ever will. They're down by 20 with 2 minutes left, and they want to reset the game clock. It's just not how it works. I urge the council, out of respect to your constituents, that you call the question this plan, as the community has made their position well known. The applicant was already on notice. They did nothing with that time. Please call the question in October as you plan to. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Tech team, if you could bring up Lynn Nash. And Lynn, you know the drill well. State your name, address, or neighborhood, and go ahead and start.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. I am risking the chance that the mayor will once again call me names and refer to me as a disgruntled person who is having a bad day because I am speaking in opposition to his opinions. As a member of East Gaithersburg United, I'm here to tell you that the East Side is not a one-issue group. We are here to keep you on task and to keep you working in the best interest of the East Side, as well as the more advantaged West Side. My name is Lynn Nash, and I live in Saybrook. I want to applaud the group of 14 persons and local businesses who have appealed the City of Gaithersburg decision about the Wawa plan. The decision was not in the best interest of the city, but more importantly, it was not in the best interest of the residents who live within 500 feet of the proposal. I want the council to know that the members of the Save Kelly Park group has appealed the MCPS plan to build a school in Kelly Park. We are disputing several of their offered facts. We are requesting that the State Board of Education transfer the appeal to an administrative judge. And until that time, we are requesting that a stop order be issued prohibiting any MCPS building on the Kelly Park site until there is a decision on the appeal. We are disputing the facts of the case. For example, MCPS did not secure the approval of the State Board of Education before entering into the land acquisition agreement, something that was required in the land acquisition document. The council approved the land acquisition agreement based on MCPS securing a number of selected issues, such as the BOE approval, and they did not. Related to this issue, I have asked the Planning Commission to update the city's project plan for GES number 8 to more accurately reflect what is going on with the MCPS plan. For example, the amount of land required. It is not 2 to 3 acres as currently is stated. I have asked a number of very specific questions regarding the MCPS plan that is in front of the Planning Commission, and I have not received a response. In addition, the council asked MCPS to conduct a boundary study. They have not. So finally, I want to tell the council, I do not want you to extend the public comment period as requested by Devals. They intentionally controlled the discussion. They waited until the last minute. They chose to run the clock out, and the public comment period closed. The period should not be reopened again to allow their attorney to respond to public concerns, especially if they want to give opinions which have no scientific base. I ask that we refuse their request for an extension and bring the proposal to the council for a vote.
Thank you, Lynn. Appreciate it. Next, we'll move on to Carol Johnson. Carol, when you get on, unmute yourself, state your name and address or neighborhood, and go right ahead.
Hi, I'm Carol Johnson. I live on Gaither Street. Thank you for this opportunity. I want to join in the opinions of my colleagues in East Gaithersburg United that I do not believe we need to, the city needs to reopen the public comment period for Duval. They've had plenty of time and they set the timeline with their public hearing and their choice of when the record would close. And so I don't see any need to keep the process going. In the meantime, since I still have almost 2.5 minutes, I want to bring up a couple of other issues that I haven't talked about before. First of all, on Gaither Street, as you all know, we don't have any sidewalks. I don't expect that that's ever going to happen. And what it means is we have pedestrians and dog walkers and people with children in strollers walking in the street. And then we have people who are speeding down Gaither Street. And I noticed the city it must have been the city put in a sign recently, you know, one of these illuminated signs that give your speed. And I applaud the city for that. Thank you very much for doing that. I don't think it's completely solved the problem. I think if you put a patrol officer with a radar gun between 6:30 and 7 on a weekday morning, you might find some people to your surprise. Secondly, on Duval Park, the city removed a lot of mature canopy trees within the last year and a half. And I talked to the tree manager guy and he promised me that they're going to be replaced. But I haven't seen any new trees replaced. And so I'm just asking tonight if you know anything about the status of that, because we are dearly in need of replacing the canopy trees in our East Deer Park neighborhood. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Carol. We can follow up on those and get back to you. And I wrote them down. I'll talk to staff about that tomorrow. Tech team, if you could bring up Carla Weinberg. Carla, once you get up, just unmute yourself, state your name and address or neighborhood, and go right ahead.
My name is Carla Weinberg, and I want to comment on agenda item 12A, motion to reopen record. Mr. Wallace's request for another extension stated that he needs more time to respond to questions raised during the September 9th virtual community meeting. I don't know if any of the council members were at that meeting because Mr. Wallace made sure we could not see who or how many participants called in. He's probably counting on no council members having watched that meeting, or they'd know the Duval team already responded during the meeting to the questions that the audience raised. He wants to have another crack at some of the answers now that he's had time to make some up. The Duval team could have held the community outreach as far back as last winter, but they waited until there was only a week left before the record closed to talk to the community, and now he wants the last word. Mr. Wallace has switched his tactics from assuring us no one would even know there was a crematory at Duval to telling us there would only be a minuscule 8-foot-tall chimney, to telling us that a crematory is allowed by Montgomery County's zoning laws in residential and retail zones. I asked a friend of mine if lawyers were allowed to lie and engage in jargon deception. And she said, "Are you kidding me? That's what JD stands for." I'm asking the council to deny the request to reopen the record. We in the community have put our lives on hold to submit comments for the record before it closed on September 16th. We have not submitted anything that should have surprised Mr. Wallace. If Mr. Wallace wants the last word, he needs to get himself a podcast. I'm done.
Okay, thanks for your testimony. I just want to note that Mayor and Council, I don't think any of us were participated in that public meeting. I think because this is a quasi-judicial matter and everything we're supposed to be using to consider the Duval application it needs to be in the record, the public record. And that was not a city meeting. It was not on the public record. So we're not supposed to consider anything that was discussed there. We're only supposed to consider what's discussed here and what's already in our record and what in the public comments we've received. Just as a matter of background. Tech team, if you could bring in Susie Ward, that would be great. Susie, once you come up, just unmute yourself, state your name, address or neighborhood, and begin.
Hi, I'm Susie Ward, and I live at 437 Gaither Street, which is in Deer Park, East Deer Park. And I also am affiliated with the East Gaithersburg United group. I would just like to say that I oppose reopening the public record. Mr. Wallace has already had the record reopened once. How many times will he request that? And how many times will the council grant his request? Pretty soon, the situation becomes ridiculous folly. Mr. Wallace has had plenty of time since February 2020 to present his case, which really couldn't have changed that much in the last few days. Please deny his request to reopen. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Next, Claire Luton. I'm guessing on the pronunciation of your last name, so sorry if I just butchered it. Please unmute yourself, state your name and address or neighborhood, and go right ahead.
Hi, my name is Claire Luton. I'm on Harmony Hall Road. I wanted to talk to two things today. First of all, that I oppose the additional extension by Deval Funeral Home's attorney for the crematorium. I believe the issue has been open long enough and it should be voted as scheduled on October 5th. There are already over 350 exhibits around this, and the exhibits show the overall feeling of the public regarding the crematorium, and I don't think any additional time would impact that. The second thing I'd like to do is I would like to understand where the 200-foot notification that is the required minimum that came from, and what needs to be done to reevaluate that distance as required. 200 feet is only 66 yards, which is less than a football field. There is a house being built that I can see from my house. The neighbors across the street got notice, and we did not. And I feel that if it impacts us from a noise and a site viewpoint, that we should have gotten notice. Also, I would like to understand, when is the 200-foot notification required? They painted the street and my neighbor's yard up to his house, and even a little bit of ours up to the telephone pole. And when I met our neighbor, he said he doesn't know why his yard was painted up. And I think that we need to understand, when does this 200-foot law or rule apply and when it doesn't? Because he even went out and spoke to the Miss Utility people when they started painting the lines, and they didn't even know why they were marking it. So I'd like to understand a little bit more around that 200-foot thing. And that's it. Thank you.
Claire, thank you very much. And let me suggest that you send me an email, judd.ashman@gaithersburgmd.gov, so we can follow up more deeply. I'm not sure any of us on this Zoom currently is conversant in the different elements that trigger different notification requirement, like which type of application triggers which notification requirement. They are a matter of city ordinance, and they, periodically we do relook at these things, and maybe you're right. Maybe it is time to take a look. When it's an individual homeowner just doing work, that would be a different level of notification requirement than the type of application that Deval filed. So if you want to really get into the ins and outs, I can help. Just send me an email and I'll get you the information that you're looking for. Is there anybody else from the public who'd like to speak? Yes, okay. Jennifer Jackson, tech team, if you could bring her up. And Jennifer, when you come up, just state your name and address or neighborhood and go right ahead.
Thank you so much. My name is Jennifer Jackson. I live in Deer Park. I was dismayed with the planning department, who appeared to be working with Deval Funeral Home, as they recommended that Deval extend the public comment period. They've already had enough time, and they've already requested one extension to the comment period. When is it going to end? I attended their community meeting, and the community already responded to a lot of the falsehoods that they had said there. At the meeting, they told us first that there weren't going to be any emissions. Then they show us a document that says that there's going to be emissions that are coming out of there. And then at the meeting, they told us that that they were serving the community, saying that people had demanded, that they want to be there in order to see cremations being there. But then at the community meeting, they tell us that only 7 people out of the, I believe it was under 300 funerals they had done, only 7 people had asked to be part of the crematorium. And then in the public comment, we didn't see anybody from these mystery folks saying that, oh, wow, this is going to be a great idea. So Duval is not interested in serving the community. Duval says that 50% of their cremations are going to, their business is going to be cremations. So they're not, that parlor that's going to be in front is not a funeral home. It's just a viewing room if somebody was to ask if they wanted to see the crematorium. But vast majority of the people are just going to be there to be cremated. And so I'm tired of Duval producing these falsehoods and then letting, having the public period extend because of it. Hold on a second. Duval says that this home is now a funeral home, but it's not a funeral home. It's a single family home. And just because it's next to a funeral home does not make it a funeral home. Instead, it's going to be a parlor with an incinerator in the back. And so therefore, the council should not extend this public period. They've had long enough. There's no need for them to produce any more falsehoods. And as my colleagues have said previously, there are a number of other ones that are there. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Do we have any other speakers from the public? Going once, going twice. Okay, not seeing any. Thank everyone for their testimonies, and we'll be considering whether or not to extend the record later in this meeting. So stay tuned. In the meantime, we're going to move to from the mayor and council, and we're going to start with Councilmember Wu.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As always, I appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight.
But you're choosing not to. Okay, got it. Thank you, Councilmember Wu. We'll go to Councilmember Harris.
Thanks, Mayor. I was going to try to be brief, but I think Rob Wu beat me to it. Couple of things. First of all, the speaker who inquired about tree replacement, I have a little bit of inside information because I talked to the folks at Public Works about tree replacement in some other parts of the city. That is typically done in late fall. That seems to be the optimal time to plant replacement trees. So I know in some parts of the city, there are a number of trees being replaced, and there are some community outreach events that will be taking place to determine what type of trees, because some trees have gone away because of various tree diseases that are going around, and we're looking for to get away from a monoculture where we have all the same kind of trees, and if there's one blight, it takes out everything. So I know the mayor will be talking to you about that, and you can get more details on what's planned for your part of the city. And I guess we'll be talking about the funeral home shortly, so I'll keep my remarks short, but I'll have more to say on that subject when we get to it. That's it for now. Thanks.
Thank you, Neil. We'll move on to Councilmember Sales.
Thank you, Mayor. So just a few highlights. As we mentioned during the last work session, the City of Gaithersburg Lake Forest Mall drive-through testing site is up and running. Currently, the schedule is every Wednesday from 9 to noon. And please check our website. If you missed the Wednesday date, there are neighboring testing sites available. Let's see. This past Friday, I joined the Voting 101 virtual community town hall to moderate the Q&A portion. The meeting was hosted by the Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, Upsilon Lambda Chapter, and the Montgomery County, Maryland Alumni Chapter Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, in partnership with the League of Women Voters of Montgomery County, National Panhellenic Council of Montgomery County, Sigma 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 Chapter, Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity of Montgomery County, and the Silver Spring Alumni Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity. I just want to thank them for putting together this informative discussion to talk about the upcoming changes to this year's election, voting rights, and also a comprehensive deep dive into the questions that will be on the ballot. So a recording will be shared shortly. That's all I have for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Lorianne. We'll move on to Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor. Many of us have lamented the unprecedented barrage of losses and challenges confronting us and seeming to pile on in this secular calendar year of 2020. And many of us have remarked only half jokingly, or perhaps not jokingly at all, that the end of 2020 can't come soon enough. Well, this past weekend, the Jewish community marked the end of its year 5780 and the start of 5781 with much the same crisis fatigue from the year that was ending. But just when we thought we had made it to the start of the Jewish New Year without another tragedy, the universe said, "Hold my beer," and we learned that the legendary Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg had passed away. If there's a silver lining, it comes from an ancient rabbinical teaching that only the most righteous among us will pass at the end of a Jewish calendar year, because when their soul stood before God's annual judgment a year ago at Yom Kippur, they were given an entire additional year to live. Given her incredible impact as a jurist and her connection to the Jewish community, it seems fitting that she left us at a time when our faith community is so focused on the idea of being judged and reminding ourselves that the ultimate justice elevates compassion and the value of all humanity. We all know Justice Ginsburg was a giant of the law, underscoring for all the importance of the rule of law in a free constitutional republic. And she was a champion of women's rights and of all civil rights, both as a lawyer and as a judge. She also became a pop culture icon and a universal role model for women and girls, as well as men and boys, all of which are going to help her legacy ripple forward for generations. But as the mayor also noted, she was a class act. She loved theater and opera. She cared for her clerks and her staff and remained close friends with colleagues such as Justice Scalia, even when they disagreed so fervently about the law. She modeled for all of us how to disagree without being disagreeable, which is such an important foundation of our legal system's purpose to resolve disputes peaceably and fairly, and a value that we here in Gaithersburg hold dear. This week, she will be the first woman and the first Jewish person to ever lie in state at the US Capitol. When I was getting sworn in as a member of the Supreme Court Bar, it was my great good fortune to have a chance to meet with her in a small group. And that was an extremely special moment in my life that I will never forget. And I hope that we will all honor her memory by recommitting ourselves to those principles she embodied in how we live, how we serve, how we advocate, and how we govern. In other news, after our work session on racial equity, I reached out to the owner of the Amber Commons development in Gaithersburg to make them aware of the fact that the 2 private roads in that community were the only ones that our staff research identified as being named for Confederate leaders from the Civil War. I made clear I wasn't speaking for the city and that our city's deliberative discussions about steps that we might take to address racial equity are ongoing. But I wanted to encourage the owner to think about what steps they might want to take to address the names of those 2 streets. And I'm happy to say that today I received a positive response, which I shared with staff. And it appears that the owner will be approaching the city planning department in the near future to discuss a proposal to potentially change the names of these two streets or otherwise provide some historical context for them. So stay tuned. I also wanted to mention, some of you may have seen news reports of an enforcement crackdown on illegal street racing in the Gaithersburg area this past week, which was a coordinated effort by the state police in conjunction with our own Gaithersburg Police Department, and involved 28 traffic stops. I know there have been increasing concerns about speeding and unsafe driving on streets by drivers taking advantage of less crowded roads during the pandemic. So I'm glad to see this enforcement effort. I'm hoping it's going to deter these dangerous activities. And while I know that our police need to be careful about not making sensitive law enforcement efforts public, I think it would be nice to hear an update from our department in the near future about these efforts as appropriate, and if they're able to share any of those details with us without compromising any law enforcement efforts. Finally, we are approaching the observance of Yom Kippur again, the Jewish Day of Atonement. And as I do at this time every year, I want to genuinely apologize for anything I have done this past year that has hurt any of my colleagues on the mayor and council, any of our city staff, any of the folks we work with in the community, or any member of the public. I truly hope you can forgive me if I have wronged you, and I appreciate your consideration. That's all I've got this evening, Mayor.
Thank you, Ryan. Everything well said, and good work on the street name issue. We'll see how that turns out. We'll go to Mike.
Yes, good evening. I don't know how I'm supposed to follow that, but I want to thank Ryan for his eloquence in describing and talking about the loss of Justice Ginsburg. I think we were all struck by that. I have 3 daughters, a granddaughter, and a wife, and almost immediately after the news, I heard from all 3 of my daughters, my adult children, commenting on that and how important Justice Ginsburg is to their lives, but also how important it will be for them to participate in the process going forward. So just want to remind everybody that it's a right that we have to vote, to say something about the form of government we live in. There's still time to register to vote in the state of Maryland for the next election. But once you do that, it's important that you actually exercise that right and vote on election day, on early voting, or voting by mail. It's important that you do that. The other thing happening is we still have a census happening. This is the end of the decade. 2020 is a census year, Census 2020. So if you haven't yet responded to the census, please do so. Gaithersburg is actually ahead of its pace, and in terms of the region, ahead of the region's pace, but it's still important that every person be counted. Everybody counts in the census. Everybody counts. So please do your part. So I want to tell Ryan that I do forgive you, and I appreciate you asking. I want to wish everybody who observes a healthy and happy and sweet New Year, and may you all be sealed in the book going forward. So finally, over the weekend, today probably, the official death count due to COVID-19 reached 200,000. 200,000 since March, when basically I think there was 1 death in the United States attributed to COVID. That's 200,000 people who have died from the disease. Over 6.9 million cases have been recorded in terms of infection. Some of those people were recovered just fine. Other individuals who were infected with COVID-19 will carry the scars of the disease with them as long as they live. And in fact, it may actually change their general health. It's clear that our government failed, the federal government failed in protecting Americans from the scourge and from the spread of the disease. But we can all do our part at this point to reduce infections and to reduce the spread, and to be conscientious about it, because the life we save may be, the people we save from being infected are people that may save us from the same fate. So it's a reminder to keep your distance, wash your hands often, wear your mask, and follow the guidance, and maintain your bubble if you need to, but follow the guidance that we have from the scientists who are managing this disease and the treatment of it. We will eventually have a vaccine. I'm a scientist. I work at the National Institutes of Health. It's kind of my job to, part of my job is to talk about the importance of science and how it helps us understand. I mean, science doesn't care what your politics are. The facts of science explain to us how a disease occurs and how we can prevent it, and how we can treat it. As a scientist, I would have to say I'm very skeptical that will be an effective vaccine available before Election Day. And I'm skeptical that we'll have one even by the end of the year, the end of 2020. So keep that in mind, pay attention to the scientists and the research, and when the vaccine is ready, we'll all know about it. But in the meantime, you can do your part to make sure that COVID is no longer spread. So that's all I have for tonight. Thank you very much. Everybody, take care.
Thank you, Mike. I just echo everything everybody else has said, and rather than repeat it, and note that we do not have a work session next week on Monday, September 28th. The next regular session of Mayor and Council is on Monday, October 5th. And with that, I have the distinct honor of introducing for her first from the city manager, Tanisha Briley. Welcome, Tanisha.
Thank you, Mayor. So Ryan, I won't take this as a slight, so you don't need to apologize or atone for it. Something good did happen in 2020, and I get to celebrate joining this wonderful city of Gaithersburg. So thank you for having me, and it has been an incredibly warm welcome from everyone. I spent my first week with all of you, learning from each of you, your ideas, challenges, advice, thoughts, all of that. This week is with the senior leadership team, and then I'll start meeting with the departments and touring more of our sites. So it's been an incredibly great couple of weeks for me as I've settled into the area, and I want to thank everyone for all of their extension of really genuinely warm welcome. And I just have a couple of items. I want to reiterate Councilman Sesma's encouragement about the census. We are in the home stretch. The last day the census will conclude on September 30th, and we would like to at least reach our 2010 count, which was 73.2% of our residents. We are currently at 71.4%, so we've still got a little ways to go. Want to encourage everyone, if you have not done so, please be counted. It means so much for our city and for our region, and we're counting on you to be counted. And I want to mention that the staff was able to secure a second voter ballot drop box. In addition to early voting at the activity center, there will be a voter drop box at the activity center and at Roberson Youth Center. So look for those as the election gets closer. And that will conclude my report for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanisha. And Mike is giving you a round of applause, I'm sure, on behalf of everybody here. Ryan, go ahead.
Yeah, first of all, totally agree. One of the bright moments of 2020 was having Tanisha join our team. So absolutely, there are still some silver lining good moments happening in 2020, and we're going to keep those going. I did want to ask about the census, though, because I've been reading some news reports that some lawsuits have actually, some judges have ruled in certain parts of the country that the September 30th deadline imposed by the Trump administration was actually either temporarily halted or pushed back by some court orders. I'm not sure that affects our counting efforts in Gaithersburg or in Maryland generally, but maybe it would be nice if staff could just sort of check into what the latest and greatest is with some of those lawsuits and how it might or might not affect our count in Gaithersburg. Because if it doesn't affect us, that's fine. But I think we ought to make that clear if people are reading news reports about these court decisions. And if it does affect us, I think we ought to make sure that we're giving whatever the best information of the time is to our staff and our census partners and the public. So just throwing that out there, maybe somebody can check on that. Thanks.
Thank you, Ryan. Tech team, if you could bring up Tom Lonergan for our economic development update.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yes, go right ahead.
All right, thank you. And good evening, members of the council. I will try to keep it brief tonight. Just had two quick items for you. The Weiss grocery store at Walnut Hill Shopping Center on South Frederick Avenue has officially closed its doors. And although the property is not technically within the city's boundaries, we do know that the closure is impacting many city residents who relied on the store for groceries and other essential needs. Economic development staff is in contact with the property's owners, and we will support their efforts to identify another grocer to re-tenant the space as best we can. Although the Weiss store has gone dark, there is an existing lease in place which will temporarily delay immediate re-tenancy, but we do hope that those issues can be resolved quickly so that the neighborhood is soon served by another grocer that can meet their needs. Secondly, and finally, did want to mention that we are getting ready to go live with the city's very first microgrant program intended to support some of our smallest enterprises which have been impacted greatest by the COVID pandemic. The Gaithersburg Emergency Microgrant Program will provide direct financial assistance to income-eligible for-profit businesses with 5 or fewer employees that have experienced a reduction in revenue as a result of the public health emergency. Grants of up to $5,000 per business will be available through the program. The program application will be available as a fillable online form on the Grow Gaithersburg website, which we expect to go live later this week. Staff will be working with our public information office and reaching out to commercial landlords and business support agencies to get the word out about the program. City staff will review applications based on a rolling random lottery system. The program is being financed with $100,000 of the city's Community Development Block Grant COVID appropriation provided through the CARES Act, and we will continue until the funding is exhausted. If you have any questions, I am available to answer them, but otherwise, that's all I've got for tonight.
Tom, I have a question, but not about those two items. The additional items that we're going to be hearing tonight about 700 Quince Orchard and about the C2 zone. I'm assuming we're doing those under staff guidance. That's coming up later. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Just wanted, because I know we're doing them. I just didn't know when staff would prefer to do them. So staff guidance works out just fine.
I'll see you in a bit.
Okay. Thank you, Tom. Next, we're going to move on to ordinances, resolutions, and regulations. If we could bring up Sean Stevens and Mark Scafidi to talk about a contract to purchase a aerial device vehicle. I'm not going to read all the letters and codes that have to do with this vehicle. Mark and Sean, welcome. Take it away.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. The resolution I bring before you tonight is to authorize the city manager to enter into a contract for the purchase of one All-Tech model AA55 ESR articulating non-over center aerial device vehicle. In layman's terms, a 60-foot bucket truck. Unit 3916, a 1999 Ford bucket truck, has reached the end of its useful life. Due to its age, condition, and reliability, it was scheduled for replacement in the FY21 budget. Currently, unit number 3916 is out of service and requires approximately $20,000 worth of repairs to get it operational and recertified. The bucket truck is an essential piece of equipment for winter lights and all city forestry operations. Due to the status of our existing bucket bucket truck and the need for replacement, the city manager has granted a waiver to the city's procurement policy in order for us to present this resolution to you tonight. The Department of Public Works wishes to utilize Sourcewell contract 012418-ALT with Alltech Industries to purchase this 60-foot bucket truck. Alltech Industries provided a quote to the city utilizing the Sourcewell contract at $187,326 delivered to the Department of Public Works. Staff obtained check prices to ensure this was the best value for the city. These check prices were as follows. Alltech provided us a non-Sourcewell price of $197,500 plus delivery, and Terex, which manufactures bucket trucks, also gave us a quote of $191,500 plus delivery for a comparable model. Due to the costs associated with the repair of the existing bucket truck and the fact that it is scheduled for replacement this fiscal year, staff recommends entering into a contract with Alltech Industries Incorporated in the amount of $187,326. Once the new unit arrives, the old unit will be sold at public auction. Do you have any questions for me?
Thank you, Sean. We'll go to Mike and then Ryan.
Sean, thanks a lot. I know our trucks get a lot of use, but I've never heard of any of our equipment lasting 21 years. Is that the lifetime you expect from the next bucket truck?
I would like to say so. We don't use, the bucket trucks aren't used as heavily as some of our other equipment. And I think with good proper maintenance, we can extend the life very well. So that's the best I can give you on that. I hope it lasts longer, but we tend to replace equipment around 10 years.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So this is unusual that we would have a piece of equipment that's twice the duration in terms of its serviceability with the city. So I'm comfortable.
And the current bucket truck we bought used. So when we bought it, it was probably close to 10 years old. So we bought it used, we got 10 out of it, and it's time for replacement.
Okay, thank you.
Ryan, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Just for the public's information, maybe you can just sort of describe Sourcewell as the sort of government clearinghouse that I understand it to be, so everybody knows what you're talking about is writing or making use of an existing government contract that was competitively bid, just so the public understands.
Yes, Sourcewell is formerly known as the National Joint Powers Alliance, which they do solicitations nationwide for municipal government agencies, and so that's where we're going for it. They changed their name from NJPA to Sourcewell in 2018.
Thanks.
With that, Ryan, would you like to move the resolution?
I would. I will move the resolution.
Mike?
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. I will call the roll. Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
Councilmember Spiegel?
Aye.
Councilmember Sales?
Aye.
Councilmember Sesma?
Aye.
And Councilmember Wu?
Aye.
Okay, carries unanimously. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Good night.
Next, let's see where we are here. Next is we're calling up Carol Muller and Shelley Williams from Parks and Rec to talk about a new theater lighting system in the Arts Barn. Ladies, welcome. Go right ahead.
Great. Thank you, and good evening, Mayor and City Council members. Shelley Williams and I would like to give you some background information, and then along with the rest of our team, answer any questions you may have regarding the resolution that is before you this evening for the purchase and installation of a theater lighting system at the Arts Barn. Shelley?
Thank you, Carolyn. Hello, everyone. Welcome, Tanisha, to one of our meetings. This is kind of exciting. I haven't been here before as a division chief, so it feels new to me too. The resolution you have is on page 54, and if you'd like to look at the background information in your packet, it's on page 52 and 53. The current theatrical lighting The stage lights, the house light, the safeties were all installed in 2002. So they're about 18 years old, and they've been a true workhorse. But the span of lifetime for this kind of equipment is only about 8 to 15 years. Since 2017, there have been many repairs that needed to be done, minor equipment failures, and we have started looking at new systems and how to go about doing this. In early 2020, the project team led by IT, members of Park, Recreation and Culture, and Public Works began exploring the replacement and upgrades to the plan with the idea of releasing an RFP for a design build project. However, in March of this year, the main system board, we call it the brain of the system, had a critical failure, and the system was entirely taken offline. Due to the age of this equipment, that piece of equipment can no longer be replaced. And in fact, if we were to try to do anything, any replacement pieces would not be conducive to working with any new lighting equipment. So currently the Arts Barn stage is only lit by utility lights at the moment. Because of the system failure, staff worked with the city administrators and finance to fast track the replacement process with a public RFQ. And during that time, we received 3 quotes ranging from $190,000 to $400,000. The project team interviewed, talked to the various vendors, and unanimously selected Barbizon Capital Inc. as the vendor that would be best for this project. Staff then worked with Barbizon to value engineer the proposal and negotiate a new price, a final price of $165,000. And that replaces existing lights, the controller, the light board, house lights, work lights, and safety lights. All of the new lights are LED, and many of them are mechanized. These 2 factors will contribute to increased staff time efficiency and overall functionality. Also, the LED system aligns with the city's commitment to being energy efficient. The funding for the projects include $147,000 in replacement funds and $18,000 from the Arts Barn operating budget. Now you may be asking yourself, why do this now? Well, there are 2 reasons. One is revenue and the other is community impact. Every year, theater-associated programs bring in almost 2/3 of the entire revenue that the Arts Barn makes. That's in ticket sales, recitals, rentals, camps, after-school theater programs. Our programs include about 150 performances each year with 13,000 hours of volunteer time to make some of those performances go. We do an awful lot in the community, and even though we're in the middle of a pandemic and it's going to prevent us from having in-person programs, the staff and our partner artists are eager to stay in connection with our patrons and our volunteers. We're going to do that through virtual programs. But the loss of our patrons, if we don't stay connected, would have impacts for future revenue. So in order to stay with our connected, our staff are looking at live streamed and recorded content. Small solo performers can be streamed right from the Arts Barn stage with portable lights. We think that will work. But we're planning a 2-person drama called The Mountaintop about the last night of Dr. King's life for February. And we're going to need theatrical lights for that, as well as for the many questions we're getting now about revenue generating opportunities, such as performers who want a professional space to stream their own program, or someone who wants to have a wedding or a meeting. There are a lot of people who are looking for the services that we can provide, but we need those theatrical lights, the safety lights, and the work lights. In short, the Arts Barn stage, with its professional lighting and sound equipment, is not only a revenue-generating amenity for the city, but it's also the heart and soul of a very vibrant performing arts community in Gaithersburg and the surrounding area. If I can answer any questions, I will. If not, we have Brian and Suzanne Takahashi on board who can answer technical questions.
Thank you, Shelley. Thank you, everyone. We'll get to questions in a sec. I just want to note that in terms of timing, this makes all the sense in the world to me. You know, we've well gone past the useful life of the previous lighting system. And here we have a situation where there's a hiatus in in-person programming. To me, it's the perfect time to do what we would have needed to do anyway. So with that said, I saw Lorianne's hand go up, and Rob's. We'll start with Lorianne.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Shelley and Carolyn, for the updates and the details. I agree, we are moving towards being more energy efficient, so I'm glad for the replacement lights. I just had a question. I know that the original amount quoted by Barbizon was $190,000, $905,000. Can you tell me a little bit more about how you were able to negotiate the lower pricing, and if we're losing any of the value of what we intended to have? Did we make any changes to the RFP during this process?
Good evening, Councilmember Sales. I can speak to that. It's actually kind of goes a little bit to Judd's point. This was actually, for better or worse, fortuitous timing. We worked on this largely over summer post-COVID, and as you guys can probably assume, there aren't many theaters that are operating right now, and so there's a lot of people who aren't making any capital expenditures on the theaters. So a lot of the value engineering and the pricing negotiation, really, it was fortuitous timing because they're just not making the sales they were before. So that was the preponderance of the cost reduction. We did not significantly change the scope in those negotiations. This is definitely a probably 90% in-kind replacement, and there's 10% extras in there for sure. As Shelley mentioned, there's things in there that we'd never had before, like moving lights, so lights that can be repositioned in the middle of performances, and that's also gonna make things a lot more efficient for staff as well.
Thank you so much. That's all I have.
Okay, Rob, go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. That was impressive. He runs the meetings and he answers questions. Just one question. So it looks like you're dipping into the operating budget. Could you, what's the rationale for that rather than just going straight out asset replacement funds? And then is there any trade-off in taking it out of your operating budget?
Shelley, would you like to speak to that, or would you like me?
Well, I always like for Brian to speak for me, so go right ahead, Brian.
And Shelley will, of course, correct me if I say anything untoward. So obviously, we were working with acting city manager Enslinger during this time. So some of the lights are actually the house lights. So they're not actually technically the theatrical lights. They all work together as part of one large system. But the normal house lights are also being replaced, also all LED and all controllable with this centralized system. And there's also safety lighting that's in the theater to light up the floor when all the lights are down, obviously, so you can still make your way out to the bathrooms, et cetera, during performances. So it was deemed that that really wasn't part of the asset system that is the theater lighting, and those were best judged to come out of the operating account.
We felt like the safety lights, especially in the work lights, where it was an important time to upgrade them. It would have been kind of silly to do them at a different time because they are all part of the same system. So we've saved a little bit of money in the last few months. So we figured we had a little extra that we could spend on something as important as that.
Thanks, that makes sense. I'll move approval.
Okay, do we have a second? Lorianne?
Second.
Okay. All in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. I will call the roll. Councilmember Harris.
Aye.
Councilmember Spiegel.
Aye.
Councilmember Sales.
Aye.
Councilmember Sesma.
Aye.
And Councilmember Wu.
Aye.
Okay, carries unanimously. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And next we have Pete Cottrell. Pete, you're conveniently on screen already. And you're going to talk to us about renewing our Microsoft licenses. Go right ahead. Pete, you are muted.
All right. Sorry, I need to unmute myself. This is a resolution of the mayor and council authorizing the city manager to enter into a new enterprise agreement to purchase Microsoft software licenses, subscriptions, and maintenance. Tonight, we have several members of the IT team with us, each of whom have put in a lot of time this summer evaluating the city's needs and examining the various Microsoft licensing and pricing options. With me tonight are Brian Helms, manager of the Business Systems Division, Guy Goodenough, manager of the Network Operations Division, and Rick Rawls, senior network operations specialist. For the past 12 years, the city has had a series of 3-year enterprise agreements with Microsoft for the purchase and maintenance of operating system software on desktop and server computers, as well as for additional software projects, such as the Office suite of programs. These agreements provide for product updates and simplify administration by allowing the city to add new licenses on an annual basis to maintain license compliancy. The most recent agreement was effective on July 1st, 2017, and expired after 3 years on June 30th, 2020. This resolution authorizes the city manager to enter into a new 3-year agreement retroactive to July 1st, 2020. The new agreement largely maintains the on-premise based office licensing and maintenance model of past agreements, along with several other Microsoft products used by the city, including server and desktop licenses, licenses for database servers, administrative tools, and client access licenses. The increase in annual cost from just over $90,000 per year to approximately $101,000 is due to some incremental increase in maintenance costs for individual licenses, as well as maintenance for the additional licenses which have been purchased over the past 3 years. One major change to this agreement is the conversion of 20 user licenses to the Microsoft 365 platform. Staff has already begun a project to evaluate the subscription model which Microsoft is steering their entire customer base to. These 20 licenses will be used by the IT department and other selected users to test the feature sets and implementation details of both Office 365 and the more comprehensive Microsoft 365 platforms. The expected outcome will be a renegotiated agreement for years 2 and 3 and a migration of the rest of the city's users to either the Office 365 or the Microsoft 365 platform. As part of the evaluation, staff will also be looking at product capabilities and deployment considerations for cloud-based document storage and accessibility from non-office locations, enhanced collaboration tools, and improve management and security solutions, including multi-factor authentication. As with the previous 4 3-year agreements, costs are based upon pricing from the State of Maryland agreement with Microsoft, which designates SHI International as a large account reseller for the enterprise agreement. And each of the city's previous enterprise agreements have been administered through SHI. The age of the state contract precludes the city from using it directly, so staff instead initially sought to use another contract available via the U.S. Communities Purchasing Cooperative, which was negotiated in March 2018. However, the pricing from the older state contract is still slightly better than that through U.S. Communities, yielding a 5.8% savings. So staff sought and received a waiver from the city manager to continue to use the state contract. The annual cost for this agreement will not exceed $105,000. Funds for the initial year of the agreement were approved in the operating budget for fiscal year 2021. And funds anticipated to be spent in FY22 and FY23 are subject to budgeting and appropriation. This concludes my presentation of the proposed resolution. May I answer any questions?
Thank you, Pete. And Rick and Guy and Brian, appreciate all your work. I don't suppose anybody's going to ask what Microsoft Office is at this point. We'll go with Brian. Go ahead.
You stole my first question, Mayor. No. 2 questions. First, thanks for your work on this, guys. You talk about doing the test run of the cloud-based products to see if we can move more in that direction in years 2 and 3. But in terms of year 1 of this new contract, where we're still using the sort of desktop-based licensing model, how do you see that working together with our short-term efforts to do more teleworking and remote working during the pandemic? obviously we're doing a lot of that already under our existing licenses, so maybe there won't be much change in terms of the functionality or, different services that are available under year one of the new contract, but maybe you can talk a little bit about that. And then I have another follow-up question.
Okay. Well, as you mentioned, we are operating in a telework situation since March, and we have, I won't say seamlessly, but we have fairly well transitioned to that. And staff are using the on-premise software. They have direct access to their desktops currently. So I think there's continuing to use that model for this year while we test the new features will continue to yield the same functionality we've been having. I think one thing that has been seen is in a virtual environment, the collaboration tools, need to be enhanced. And so I think moving to the new platform, we will see more efficiency gained as we move into years 2 and 3. But I think we're pretty well set for year 1 to continue with the standard efficiencies we've had.
Great, thanks. And then just a quick side question. One of the nice benefits for our employees has been a discount on the purchase of their own personal licenses for these products and services in each of the years that we've had these contracts. Do you anticipate that continuing to be an element of the contract as a benefit that we can provide to our employees?
I think we do anticipate it staying. I will say that benefit has been a moving target, and just as Microsoft is moving all of their customers to the subscription model, so have they done with the home use program. Previously, you could buy the on-premise version installed directly at a greatly discounted cost, but over a year ago, they moved that home use benefit to the subscription model, and so they're already ahead of the game on us on that, in that aspect.
Okay, thanks.
Mike, go right ahead.
So I guess I would have to relate my own experience working with a federal agency that moved this way over a year ago. It's been a pretty smooth transition. The products are much more stable than previous Windows and Microsoft products, and highly compatible with other systems such as Macintosh. So I guess the most important thing is the replacement of Explorer with I think something they call Edge. But what's important is I think that there has to be compatibility with other browsers, Chrome, Safari, Firefox, etc. And as long as that's maintained, and certainly for PDF documents, we're going to rely on Adobe as well. So I think in this framework and this kind of ecosystem of software, this probably makes a lot of sense. So I don't have any problems with this going forward. So as long as that compatibility and is maintained both for employees that might choose a different platform for personal computers, as well as the public who need to interact with our websites and everything else.
So would you like to move the resolution?
I'll move the resolution.
Neil, go ahead.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. I will call the roll. Councilmember Harris.
Aye.
Councilmember Spiegel.
Aye.
Councilmember Sales.
Aye.
Councilmember Sesma.
Aye.
Councilmember Wu.
Aye.
Carries unanimously. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So next on our agenda is staff guidance, and first we will invite Greg Mann, tech team, if you can bring up Greg Mann to talk about the request to reopen and extend the record on the Duval application.
Good evening. Can you guys hear me?
Greg. Go right ahead.
Good evening. Staff is before you tonight about a request to reopen the record for concept site plan application SP-8415-2020. As outlined in the included request letter, the applicant requests the council reopen the record until 5 p.m. October 7th with anticipated policy discussion during the November 2nd meeting. I would note at this time, the record is closed. It closed at 5 p.m. on September 16th and is currently scheduled for policy discussion at the October 5th meeting. And that's basically it. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer it.
Thank you very much, Greg. So I'll start off this conversation just by saying, pointing out before Councilmember Wu has a chance to, I don't have a vote on this, which is unfortunate. I'd love to have a vote on this, but if I were voting on it, I'd be inclined not to grant this extension. I believe that, we have an extensive record on this subject. We did grant an extension to the applicant before to get us to the September 16th date. We've heard, we've gotten plenty of information in the record from the applicant. We've gotten plenty of information from the public. I don't see, it's hard for me to see how extending it further would add anything meaningful to the record that would impact ultimately a decision here. So my inclination is would not be to grant this. So we will go with Ryan and then Neil, and then we'll see who raises their hands next. Go ahead, Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to again sort of explain the context of this discussion and the sort of general practice of the city in the wake of our earlier discussions tonight about being civil and working collaboratively, both with applicants and members of the public. We do, generally speaking, tend to be amenable to a reasonable extension of the deadline to give people the opportunity to submit what should be additional meaningful comments to the public record. In this case, we already did that once and gave both the applicant and others additional opportunity to submit to the record on an issue that's obviously of great interest to a lot of people. So we wanted to make sure we gave everybody additional opportunity to weigh in and submit whatever materials they wanted. The concern about, continuing to give extensions is the risk that it sort of becomes an endless back and forth between an applicant who says, I need time to respond to new public comments that may have come in just under the wire on our existing deadline. And then we give them that extension, and then the members of the public come and say, all right, well, we need an extension to respond to the new response from the applicant. And then the applicant says, I need a new extension to respond to the response to the response. So there does have to be a point at which we have to sort of reasonably cut it off. And at this point, I tend to agree with you, Mayor, that we've had ample opportunity for the applicant and for many members of the public to submit comments prior to the close of the record. And it's really not clear to me that there's any pressing need to reopen the record to address new arguments. Seems that arguments and issues have been addressed extensively on this subject already and submitted, and the mayor and council will consider all of those public comments already. So, with respect to the applicant and with respect to our general philosophy of trying to be amenable, there has to be a reasonable cutoff point. And so I would agree, and I'm going to vote, or I guess I'm not going to vote, because if we don't have any vote, we'll just keep the record closed as it is. I'm going to support keeping the record closed. But I do just want to say one other thing. I just want to take this moment as a learning moment for all of us. We talked at the beginning of this meeting about our city culture of disagreeing without being disagreeable. I just want to say to members of the public, to applicants, to anybody who comes before the city council or submits materials to the city council, you're free to submit whatever you like, but hyperbole, ad hominem attacks on people, unprofessional comments are not persuasive in general to this body. I understand people's passions run high when we're considering things that affect you, but we're not trying to play any gotcha games. We are trying to commit ourselves to a civil process that is based on rules and procedures, that gives everybody an opportunity to be heard. Please consider carefully whether you really want to, make attacks on individuals or call people liars or say that all lawyers are liars. I wonder how Justice Ginsburg would have responded to a comment like that. We will respond to reasoned and respectful communications, and I personally think those are much more effective. Let's hopefully all take this just as a moment. We deal with these public processes all the time. Part of our job is to, take the criticism even when it's harsh, and that's fine. I just think people should think carefully about how they want to couch the comments and the submissions they make into the public record, or just before this body when we're considering something. So I've said my piece on that, but I will not be supporting an extension of the record.
Thank you, Ryan. We'll go to Neil and then Rob.
All right, thanks, Mayor, and thanks, Ryan and Mayor Ashman, for both of your comments. I tend to agree with what's been said. We have a very large volume of comments that have been sent, both by the applicant and their representatives, as well as by many, many, many members of the public. We've looked at not only comments from individuals, but academic research into the area, and it just seems very difficult to imagine that another couple of weeks is going to turn up any new information or manage to persuade anyone of anything that's different than what's today. I'd like to just briefly address some of the comments that have been made about this process. The city's process for these kinds of projects is that an applicant could be a developer or a property owner, but they come to us with a project, which we then, our staff and our elected officials and various commissions and committees that are appropriate will evaluate. We don't decide that a certain type of project is going to go to in a certain place. Somebody says, I think I have a project that is a fit, and then we have to make a judgment, and that's the process that we're going through. So no decisions have been made. There was no preconception of what's going to go where here or with any other project that comes before us. So just to keep it brief and sum up, I'm also not going to support an extension of the comment period. I'd like to wrap things up and move forward.
Thank you, Neil. We'll go to Rob.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. And so I'll echo both your comments and the comments of my colleagues, and just make two additional points. Is that one, we've been reading the comments that have come in during the open record, and I would imagine that a lot of the comments that were expressed to us were also comments that were expressed at this community meeting, and therefore, it seemed to me that that the lion's share of the comments that were made, the substantive comments, addressed issues that we addressed to the applicant at the initial meeting, and therefore I'd expect that in response to our concerns that were relayed, that additional information, or would it behoove the applicant to put additional information into the record to address our comments. The second point I would have is that the applicant came in and made a specific request for extension of the record so that it could engage the community in community outreach. And so, I think it would be incumbent on the applicant at that time to weigh the amount of time it would need to set up a meeting, to receive information and respond to that information the amount of time that it actually requested to do that. And so that's why I'm also not in favor of granting an extension in this regard.
Mike, go right ahead.
Yeah, I won't repeat what's already been said. I'm in agreement with all of those comments. I would add that I guess Neil actually brought this up as well, as I don't foresee any new compelling information that would be added that would change the the positions of either party, either the Duval business or the community. So whether it's scientific or other feelings about compatibility with the neighborhood. So there's nothing, there's no compelling reason to continue this process. And I think I'm ready to discuss the final resolution on October 5th.
Thank you, Mike. Lorianne, did you want to add anything?
I would agree with what's already been mentioned. The applicant has had more than enough time to communicate the scope of the plans, respond and address community concerns. And so I too am ready to discuss the final decision and how best to move forward on October 5th.
Okay, well, that's some guidance for you, Greg. It seems like we have unanimity. So I'm going to move on. We have two other items under staff.
Mr. Mayor,
yeah.
Excuse me, if I can interrupt for a second. There is a specific request before the council. So I do believe that there should be a motion from the council. So it sounds like it would be a motion to deny the request to extend the record.
So moved.
All right. Wait, did someone second it?
Second.
Okay. All right, then we will call the roll. All those in favor of denying the request, say aye. Any opposed, say nay. Councilmember Harris.
Aye.
Councilmember Spiegel.
Aye.
Councilmember Sales.
Aye.
Councilmember Sesma.
Aye.
And Councilmember Wu.
Aye.
Thank you. Carries unanimously. Thank you, Lynn. Appreciate you keeping us on the up and up there. Tech team, if you could bring in Tom Lonergan, and I'm not exactly sure who's going to lead us in the conversations on 700 Quince Orchard in the C2 zone. Tom, okay, we have John Schlichting, Frank Johnson. Okay, welcome. Tom, I'm going to let you, or whoever wants to take it away, take it away.
John Schlichting will be taking this one away. John, you're on mute.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. First of all, on the last application, it was mentioned several times that policy discussion was scheduled for October 5th on the Duval Funeral Home, but I believe it's scheduled for October 19th. Doris, am I not right?
Staff corrected that today. They were going to stick with October 5th since the record, if it remained closed. If the motion wasn't made to extend that record, they were going to keep with the October 5th policy discussion.
Okay, thank you, Doris. So, good evening, Mayor and Council. I am John Schlichting. I am your Director of Planning and Code Administration, and I also want to please allow me to add my warm welcome to Tanisha Briley on her first Mayor and Council meeting. Welcome, Tanisha. I have the privilege of having the agenda item with the longest title, but I'm not going to read the entire title. I am seeking City Council sponsorship for a text amendment to Chapter 24 this evening that will clarify residential uses permitted as public uses in the city. Specifically, this text amendment will define that permitted public uses in all of our non-residential Euclidean zones, which are all of our commercial and employment zones, would exclude any residential use. Should the City Council sponsor this text amendment, staff will then identify a joint public hearing date with the Planning Commission and begin the required legal advertising and notifications. I should note that this is a joint request from both Planning and Economic Development in the City Manager's Office, and Tom Lonergan and I are both here to answer any questions.
Thank you, John. So I guess we just need a motion to sponsor, correct? Okay, I saw Rob Wu's hand go up. Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, thank you, and thank you, staff, for the presentation on this. I agree. I think that, one, it's hard for me to imagine that residential uses would be permitted by right in all Euclidean zones. I mean, that kind of defeats the purpose of the various zoning ordinances that we have. And so to clarify that explicitly with respect to the public use, I think is a smart move. So I'll move introduction.
Move to
Sponsorship.
Move to sponsor.
Right. Okay. Mike.
I will second the motion. I
All
agree
those
with what Rob said.
What'd you say, Mike?
I agree with what Rob said.
Okay, great. So all those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. I'll call the roll. Councilmember Harris.
Aye.
Councilmember Spiegel.
Aye.
Councilmember Sesma.
Aye.
Councilmember Wu.
Aye.
And Councilmember Sales.
Aye.
Okay, that carries unanimously. And now 700 Quince Orchard. Tom, you go right ahead. Or
Mr.
whoever,
Mayor, that's
whoever
going to
wants
be
to
handled
lead.
by Greg Mann.
Okay, Greg. Okay. Greg, take it away.
Good evening again. Staff is before you tonight to present a courtesy review on application ASDP-8610-2020 and seeking guidance on how to proceed with this application. The amendment to schematic development plan is for 700 Quince Orchard Road and is requesting approval to convert the ground floor parking garage back to habitable office space, which will increase the square footage of building up to about 180,000 gross square foot. The amendment will also include minor architectural elevation changes related to the proposed conversion and a change in use to add integrated light manufacturing to the currently approved mix of office and R&D lab uses. The proposed application is to facilitate a new biotech company associated with Operation Warp Speed, which is of critical public interest. I would note this application covers the 700 Quince Orchard property only, and a future application is anticipated to be submitted for the remaining property at a future date. Section 24-198C states that for an amendment involving a change of use or changes other than to use, staff shall present the application to the council as a courtesy review. It further states, following the review or the presentation to the council shall either one, deem the application to have a minor effect and thereby direct the planning commission to make a final decision, or two, the council may direct the application be referred to the planning commission for further evaluation, public hearing, and recommendation. The council should therefore after approve or disapprove the recommendation of the planning commission. Staff is of the opinion the proposed changes are minor and recommends the council find the application to have a minor impact and to direct the planning commission to make a final decision on the amendment. A tentative public hearing is scheduled before the planning commission on October 21st.
Okay, thank you, Greg. I saw Mike's hand go up first and then Neil's. So go ahead, Mike, and then we'll go to Neil.
Thank you, Greg, for that summary. I think that it's pretty simple what the developer wants, what the applicant and developer wants to do. I think the last amendment we provided for this plan was to remove a parking deck because there was ample parking on the first floor of this building, plus the property alongside the building adjacent to Quince Orchard Road. So I'm just curious if there are plans to bring that parking deck back on parallel to Quince Orchard Road, or is there another plan to accommodate the parking that will be lost when the first floor space is closed and used for lab space or whatever space they're proposing?
There is not a plan currently to rebuild the parking structure that was approved as part of the SDP. The parking will be facilitated on the adjacent property, which has an existing parking field now. The applicant will be proposing to submit some type of easement, parking easement between the two properties to ensure that the parking is remained in the future for any redevelopment that does occur.
Okay, thank you.
Neil, go ahead.
All right, so I think this is wonderful. Given that I'm participating from the USS Enterprise, anything relating to warp speed is fine with me. But seriously, folks, this project is something that is exactly what we hoped for from this property that was very challenged for use. It's gone through quite a metamorphosis, and it's hard to imagine that they've gutted the first floor and now to make parking, and now we're going to put it back. But all's well that ends well. This is a great project and really a minor change to the site as it's currently configured. So I support moving ahead as and constituting this as a minor change to the site plan.
Thank you, Neil. We'll go Ryan.
I agree with that, Neil, and just want to, point out for the public that what's under consideration tonight really only relates to that building at 700 Quince Orchard and its immediate environment. It doesn't relate to the entire larger site that we have discussed in past meetings. So with that, I completely agree that this has a minor effect and would support directing the Planning Commission to make the final decision. And both an economic development and a planning impact that are very positive.
Thank you, Ryan. We'll go to Rob. Rob, say your piece and then make the motion, please.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and I will. I think it's a minor impact as well. I mean, the parking structure is internal to the building itself, and they're making it up with respect to an adjacent use, so it's not really impacting the site itself because you're using adjacent site parking. And I don't think adding the use of light industrial to it, it's just adding one more use to a panoply of uses that can be made on the property. So therefore, I support the recommendation and allowing the Planning Commission to move forward with, and I make the motion.
Okay, we have a second, Mike?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. We'll call the roll. Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
Councilmember Spiegel?
Aye.
Councilmember Sesmo?
Aye.
Councilmember Wu?
Aye.
And Councilmember Sales?
Aye.
Okay, carries unanimously. Thank you very much, Greg. And I got a text earlier from Dennis that he does not have anything from any other staff. Lynn, do you have anything?
I just have one brief update for the council, and this deals with what we anticipate is proposed legislation in the upcoming session dealing with police reform. I've been serving on a working group composed of MML, MACO, and legit representatives. And last week on Thursday, the Senate Judicial Proceedings Committee did release 15 draft pieces of legislation, draft bills. They are, and again, that was Thursday afternoon, they released that. They're holding hearings this week, starting tomorrow, Wednesday, and Thursday on these bills. They only gave individuals until 9 o'clock this morning to submit written comments. So there's been a very quick turnaround time. They're also limiting public testimony. They've hand-selected 12 individuals, 6 from each side to testify, and then they had 35 open slots for additional testimony on these bills. Again, we're not in the session yet, so these are kind of working bills. They've obviously not been introduced yet. But these bills deal with a wide swath of ideas related to police reform, including adopting use of force standards, releasing officers' personnel records, including complaints of misconduct, eliminating no-knock warrants, providing that officers have a duty to intervene when another officer uses force with criminal penalties if they don't, providing that officers have a duty to report misconduct of other officers, including criminal penalties, some whistleblower protections, body camera requirements, allowing the state prosecutor to investigate use of force cases, and increase in the tort claims caps for cases involving police officers, and then eliminating or significantly modifying the Law Enforcement Officers' Bill of Rights. Due to the really short timeframes to turn around written comments, MML and MACO only submitted written testimony on issues that they had weighed in on in previous sessions. So on personnel records under the Maryland Public Information Act, the tort claims caps, and body cameras. Staff did discuss these bills on Friday, and we did not believe that we had adequate time to develop testimony and also to get you all involved in what that testimony and positions would be. So the city did not submit testimony, separately from the MML testimony. There will be further hearings on these bills once the session begins, of course. So there will be future opportunities to weigh in on these bills. There are several House work groups as well. These are just the Senate, on the Senate side. So there's several House working groups on police reform, but we have not seen any of their draft bills yet. So we're not really sure exactly what they will be proposing on the House side. But staff will continue to monitor all these bills and the hearings and update you as we move forward. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Lynn. I guess, as we have details on the specific bills, it would be helpful to hear some sort of analysis of how they would impact the operations of our police department. And, also liability and things of a legal nature from you, if there's a way that, if there's 15 bills or whatever, and it's a moving target, I realize that's a lot to pay attention to and get your arms around. How do you think the best way for us to proceed would be?
Well, I certainly, Jess Kwasny was part of the discussions that we had on Friday, as well as the chief. We're going to be monitoring the hearings this week to just kind of see what comes out of those. Again, these are draft bills at this point. But we intend to submit a summary to you after the hearings go forward this week, kind of see where things fall out. And then, again, once we hear from the House side what they intend to introduce, we will follow that as well.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions or comments from council? Not seeing any. Okay. Well, thank you, Lynn. And as I mentioned, we do not have a work session next week. The next regular meeting of the Mayor and Council is on Monday, October 5th, right here on Zoom. And until next time, let's do great things, Gaithersburg. We are adjourned.